This is the lever crank drawing. So we're going to use some of the skills that we have covered in this week's assignments to be able to create this lever crank. So the first thing that we want to do is kind of look a little bit about where we want to start with this drawing. And when I look at this drawing right here, I notice some things. First of all, I have this radius of 70. Then I know the radius, but I don't really know the center point. I look down here, I know the diameter and the radius, the diameter of the circle, the radius here, and I know the center point, and it looks like some other items are given, I'm given information about them from this circle here and from the center point of these two items. So I'm going to start off in this bottom left-hand corner. So I'm going to choose my circle command and just select somewhere on my screen. Okay, and I'm going to start with the diameter, which is 16. Then I'm going to go to my circle command, make sure I'm on radius, drag my cursor over, and notice how it's selecting that center point. If you're not getting this, remember your drop-down menu, make sure you have center point chosen. So it'll snap to that center point. I'm going to drag my cursor out, and I put my radius in of 20. So there's my first portion of this heart. Now I do know that this item right here is going to be trimmed, so we'll be using the trim command today too. So I look at my next drawing and I have a radius of 32 and this diameter of 32. And I know the center point here, as far as how far over it is from my first circle that I put in. And I also know my height here. So how do I know this height from this bottom point is because if I look at this horizontal line, it's touching this arc at the quadrant or this circle that we will trim at this lower quadrant as well as this lower quadrant. So I could actually do a couple different things to create this. And again, you may approach this drawing a few weeks from now and say, oh, there's a little bit quicker and easier way, and that's great. But I just want to show you using some of the techniques we learned this week. So I'm going to go ahead and do my circle command with radius because I'm going to do the 32 first. And I can actually just utilize what I have here. And I can use my base point and I'm just going to move it over. And then I can go ahead and move it up if I want to. Or I can also use my object snap. So I may show you a couple different ways. So I'm just going to choose the center of my circle here. And I'm just going to drag it out. And it is a radius of 32. And then I could just use my move command. I can select move, select anywhere on my screen because I don't need to have a set base point here, and just drag my cursor out the 76. I can also choose my move, select my circle. I'm going to right click to hit enter and choose that quadrant point and just drag it up until it's aligned with this quadrant. I'm going to select it. Now don't click. I'm just dragging my cursor over it, and notice with my object snap tracking, I can slide it right over. And object snap tracking is this the one that looks like an angle, and it uses snap to be able to keep things aligned, that green line that you see. Then I can go ahead and choose my circle diameter option so we can put this smaller circle in, and we'll type in our 32. So the next thing I look at is like, okay, I can go ahead and put my line in because I know it starts at this quadrant and goes to this quadrant. It's a horizontal line. Hit escape. I can't put this arc in yet because again, I don't really know the center point. I only know the radius, but I do know the center point of this radius here and my full circle. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my circle diameter is what I'm going to start with. Actually my circle radius, excuse me. And again, you can do this a couple different ways. I know how far over it goes or up it goes, not necessarily how far over, but I do know the quadrant aligns with this lower arc that I already put in. So I'm going to put this in basically the same way. I'm going to select my center point here, and I'm going to put in my radius of 20, which I already have a radius of 20, so that's right over top the other one. I'm going to select move, and I'm going to choose one circle. Right click, and from my center point I can, or anywhere on my screen, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to choose my center point and then just drag my cursor straight up, make sure it's straight up, and then I'm going to type in that distance, which is 64. If by chance you didn't, maybe it was a little off a little bit, you can always right click and undo, and it will undo that last step. I'm going to choose move, select my circle again, right click, and now I'm going to choose this quadrant because I'm going to come down here and touch this quadrant. I don't click, I just touch it, drag it straight up, and there's that object snap tracking. Notice it keeps it horizontal, and I just click, and there is that circle as well. Okay, to make sure that we have everything in correctly. Now I can go ahead and go to my circle command and my diameter and select my circle and type in my 20. So what happens if you put something in and you're like, wait a minute, some of this looks a little off. This doesn't look right. You can always come in and like, oh, I don't know, did I put it in as 12 or 20? You can always come up to your measure, select your radius and select that circle, and notice it shows the radius of 10 and 12, and I can like, oh, the diameter is 12, not 20. So I can either come in and I can select it and I can erase it, which is probably the easiest that you know right now. So we'll do our center command again. And then this time I'm going to type in my 12. And I look at my drawing, I'm like, okay, that looks a lot better. Okay. Then I can choose my line command. And from my quadrant to my quadrant to put in that line there. Now, as you're moving through here, again, if you're not sure if something's the right size, you could always come back here and do a distance and check your measurements. Is this really 76? Did I accidentally type in something different? And check those measurements. So this last arc that I want to put in here before I start doing some trimming, I know the radius, and I know it touches this circle and it touches this circle. So if I come up to my circle command, I have an option called tangent radius. So I know it's tangent somewhere on the circle. Notice it doesn't give me an exact item to click. It's just saying it's going to be tangent on this curve, tangent on this curve, and then I just type in the radius of 70, because if you look at your cursor, it says specify your radius. So type in my 70, and there is my item here. So now I can come up to my trim, and remember, anything that you select that has an intersection point can be trimmed away. So I can go ahead and select. So let's say I accidentally selected this side. Whoops. I'm like, oh, that's not the one I wanted. Just right click, hit undo, and you can select the appropriate side. And then you can come in here and select enter when you're finished or hit escape. And there is your finished drawing. Now, again, if you're not sure about your measurements, you're like, I don't know, maybe something's a little off. Maybe I have the wrong size of something. You can always come in and do a quick measurement and make sure that everything is correct. There's a radius of 32 and so forth. That is how you complete the lever crank.